Um, all right, so time is running. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sławomir Smyczek, and as a head of scientific committee of the International Conference on New Media and Higher Education, Opportunities and Threats, I would like to welcome all of you at our university, University of Economics in Katowice. Particularly because we have so many foreign guests, including representatives of Romania, Jordan, Spain, Hungary, Kuwait, Thailand, USA, Germany, and of course our partner from Norway and Liechtenstein. I would like to, and I know that some of them you are for the first time in Poland, so I would like to welcome very warmly in our beautiful country. We have also a lot of colleagues from different universities in Poland, so I would like to welcome you here in Katowice, the city of gardens. I hope that during the evening or night you will have you can have experience with our beautiful gardens. And of course, I would like to welcome very warmly our staff, so academicians and administration staff at this conference. Particularly, I would like to welcome very warmly our rector, Professor Leszek Żabiński. I would like to welcome also our vice rectors, which are the member of the scientific committee. I would like to welcome very warmly our vice rector for development and organization, Professor Robert Tomanek. And vice rector for education and international cooperation, Professor Wojciech Dyduch. We also have a very special guest because our conference is financed by the European project. So I would like to welcome Katarzyna Aleksandrowicz, which is representing she's found directors from the Foundation of Development of Education System. So probably she still is on the way. And Sylwia Iżyniec, fund coordinators from Foundation of Development of Education System. I would like to also very warmly welcome our partners in the project. Herwig Damon, member of the project team from the University of Liechtenstein. Welcome. And Wolfgang Laschet, member of the project from Norwegian University of Science and Technology from Trondheim. And of course, I would like to welcome very, very warmly our key speaker, but because the conference is on new media, so we try to implement this in the practice, and we have one of the key speakers online. So I would like to welcome Dr. Oliver Müller, assistant professors from Institute of Information Systems and the University of Liechtenstein. Hello, Oliver. Hello. But we are also very traditional university, so we have traditional key speaker who will stay with us. So it's Edwin van Rest, founder and CEO of the study portals. Very famous and very international person here. All right, so actually I would like to, because we are at the University of Economics in Katowice. We are the oldest university in the region, in this region of Poland, and we are one of the strongest university of economics in Poland. This university was founded in 1937. Well, because the conference is about the new media, so I shouldn't talk too much. It's better if I will show you some slides, because the new generation is basing mostly on the pictures. So now, please look at our university and our activity. And I hope that all the pictures shows more or less what we are doing at our university. And as I mentioned you before, our conference is a part of the big European project. Few months ago, people from the Bureau of Promotion and New Media, and we start thinking about the different challenges which are arising in the new markets. Of course, one of the most important issues is internationalization of higher education. Of course, internationalization was always priority. When we come back to our very famous scientists like Nicolas Copernicus or Maria Skłodowska-Curie, they also have to get experience from different universities. However, how strong and how dynamic internationalization of the higher education is, so it's creating new opportunities and new threats for different universities. Of course, when we are talking about the internationalization, we have to keep in mind that we are the part of the European Union and we are creating or co-creators of the common European joint market of the higher education. And this kind of markets have to compete with the US universities, with the Chinese universities, so the situation is becoming more and more complicated on the markets. From the other side, we have a lot of technological changes, social changes. The new media are coming, so also they will give us the input to make modification in our system. Also, the new requirements are coming from the labor market, so we need to provide a specialist who has a different skills or completely new skills. So the traditional ways of teaching and learning the students is not valid anymore. So that's why we have to take in consideration this kind of changes. So definitely the new generation, our students or our potential students, they try to communicate in a completely different way, not like we are doing traditionally. So they prefer the online contact. Also, of course, it's influence on our way how we promote our university, how we provide the certain information to our candidates, to our students, and of course, how we communicate with our environment. So not only with the students, but also with the employers, and the other institutions are playing a significant role on the current higher education market. So that's why we didn't want to see this kind of changes as a problem. We tried to see this as a challenge for us. So we try in this project develop informatic as well as the promotional tools that will help us, our university, but not only just universities in Poland, lasting relationship with the universities, with our candidates, with our students, with our staff, with our alumni. So to create really and to implement really new marketing paradigm. It's not a really new one, but it's very intensive explored, so we are talking about the relationship marketing. So that's why my staff from Promotional and New Media Bureau, we created the project and we applied to the EEA and Norwegian grants, and we create, I think, very good project, and of course we were lucky, so we got this project and we got the funds, and that's why now we can organize the International Conference on New Media and Higher Education Opportunities and Treats. As I mentioned, because we are lucky, so we also get the honorary patrons of our Minister of Science and Higher Education, Professor Lena Kolarska-Babinska, and our Rector, Professor Leszek Żabiński. And now I would like to ask our Rector, His Magnificence Professor Leszek Żabiński, officially to open this conference.
Thank you very much. It is my great honor and pleasure to warmly welcome you on the behalf of the authorities of our university and myself at the opening ceremony of the International Conference New Media and Higher Education, Opportunities and Threats. We are very proud to host you at our university, one of the oldest academic institution in Upper Silesia. This conference is organized under the honorary patronage of Professor Lena Kolarska-Bobińska, Minister of Science and Higher Education. I am indebted to Professor Kolarska-Bobińska for her kind acceptance of this patronage. The program of this conference is connected with the International Education and Research Project on international support, strengthening relationship between the university, candidates, students, alumni and workers by using new media, funded by the European Economic Area and Norway Grants. Through the EEA agreement, Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway, together with the 28 European Union member state partners, are helping to reduce economic and social disparities and to strengthen bilateral relations with the country in the Central and Southern Europe. We are very extremely grateful to them for this effective action and projects. Our conference will focus on the topics related to the latest teaching methods and internet marketing, because these approaches, the more dominating in education at all levels. It's also connected with cultural differences nowadays and in the future. Therefore, we ought to explore these differences and research them. I congratulate the organizers on choosing such interesting leading topics for this conference. Opening this conference, I would like to express my delight that this interesting and creative program gathered an excellent body of students and professors from 21 countries, among others Hungary, Jordan, Kuwait, Spain, Romania, Thailand, from renowned universities. I would like to welcome you and to wish you fruitful discussions and exchange of inspiring thoughts. I would like to cordially welcome the special guest of our conference, Mr. Edwin van West, founder and CEO of Study Portals, and online, Mr. Oliver Miller, assistant professor on the Institute of Information System at the University of Liechtenstein, which would hold a video conference. Especially, I would like to express gratitude to the main institutional partners of this conference, University of Liechtenstein, Valais, and personally to Mr. Wolfgang Laschetz, consultant, Norwegian University of Science and Technology, and personally to Mr. Henning Damons. Additionally, I would like to thank the scientific committee of our conference, headed by the Deputy Rector, Professor Sławomir Smyczek, and the organizing committee, led by Mrs. Magdalena Skowron, by their hard work and efforts put into making this conference happen. Finally, I would like to wish all the participants of this conference interesting results of the presentation, informative discussions, outstanding publication of research results, and the remarkable experience from the visit to our university and the trips to Krakow and Auschwitz. Thanks a lot.
Director, thank you very much for the kind words and for the official opening of this the conference. We can promise that we will work hard during those days, and we will try to find the best solution for our university, because it's not only our university, but we have a lot of partners here. So how to deal on the international higher education market and how to implement the new media in our research and also the promotional activity. Thank you very much. In the meantime, there was the our special guests arrived, so it's, I would like to welcome one more time Ms. Katarzyna Aleksandrowicz and Sylwia Iżniec, which are representing Foundation for Development Education System, and which is the founder of this project. So welcome very, very warmly here. And yes, because you switch here. So now we have to start work. So briefly, I would like to present the program for the next few days. So we are done with the registration. Now, soon we will start the opening plenary session, and there will be the two keynote speakers. So first, the Dr. Oliver Miller, and we will have online presentation, and Edwin van Rest, who is joining us. So we are planning to finish on time, so at 11:30. Then, after the coffee break, we will start competitive session. And we always have 3 competitive sessions in different rooms. You will find a number of the rooms in your materials. So those who are the speakers, you are requested to go to your rooms and plug your presentation. And those who are just visiting us, so please select the session which is the most attractive for you. Of course, I would like to invite you for the hard discussion part, talk to the speakers, but of course with the audience as well. Then after the presentation, we will have a lunch. And after lunch, we will come back to the same rooms for next 3 competitive sessions. And afterwards, we will have a coffee break and the closing plenary. And today we are going to, first of all, present all the details concerning the project, as well the details concerning the conference proceedings and the publications and the whole process. As well, I would like to hang out the certificate for the fantastic presentation hope you will have during this whole day. For tomorrow, we will have also very intensive day. We start 9:30, so the half hour before, and we will have very interesting presentations delivered by our partners in our project. So the first presentation will be delivered by Herwig Damon from the University of Liechtenstein, and the second one from Wolfgang Lasset from Norway, from Trondheim. Then we will have a coffee break, and after coffee break, I think that we will participate in very interesting workshop on communication issue, tolerance and cultural differences. Afterwards, we will have a lunch, and then, as I mentioned, we have so many guests outside the Katowice, so we would like to show you our city. We have professional tour guides, so you will have hopefully you will have very interesting time. And on the Wednesday, we are planning to organize some social programs, so the Auschwitz and the Krakow, which is on the UNESCO list, and it's totally must to see before you're leaving Poland. All right, so now I would like to move to Liechtenstein, and I would like to invite Dr. Oliver Miller to present your first presentation, so introduction to the new media and how we're going to deal with this, okay? So hello, Oliver. So the floor is yours.
Good morning, Katowice. I hope you can hear and see me well.
Of course. Yes.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to join the conference on new media, via new media, so we can already see the opportunities and maybe the threats this technology brings to higher education today. My name is Oliver Müller, and I'm assistant professor in information systems. In particular, my research focus is on using unstructured data and information. So this means text data, image data, and video data. And today, I want to talk about one specific technology, namely augmented reality and the potential for teaching and learning. We have conducted a project with the National Museum of Liechtenstein, and they were hosting a mathematics exhibition, which is actually now traveling through Germany and Austria. And we have used augmented reality technology to make this very abstract content of a mathematics exhibition more tangible. I would like to start by asking the audience a question. Please raise your hand if you already know what augmented reality is. Okay, about at least half of the people. And please now raise your hand if you have already used augmented reality technology yourself. maybe it's best to introduce the technology by using some examples. I assume you have all seen Google Glass in the past. So it's normal glasses or goggles which you can wear, but they are connected to the internet. And the device has the possibility to project digital information on the glasses, which is context aware. So for example, if you are visiting a new city, you can show directions to go from place A to B to find your hotel or a nice restaurant directly on the glass. So you don't have to run through the city with your head down on your mobile phone anymore. It is totally blended into the glasses. Or you are looking at a historical building and Google Glass can show you some facts and figures about this building, for example, from Wikipedia or Google Maps. So this is definitely some high-end augmented reality technology. Unfortunately, the story goes that the project was stopped in January 2015 by Google because it did not gain much user acceptance, especially for privacy reasons. Because you can also take videos with these glasses, and this might invade the privacy sphere of some of the people around you, of course. But this is not the end of augmented reality. So there are other technologies, especially nowadays with mobile technologies, so smartphones and tablets, which have built-in cameras, GPS location, and of course internet access. And there are lots of mobile apps available. This one is an example from Aurasman, which we used in our project. And it's very easy to use and for free for the consumer. So basically you point the camera of your mobile device at a certain place. In this example, it's the historical building in London. And the camera will detect a so-called trigger image. So whenever you point your camera onto this building, a dinosaur, Tyrannosaurus Rex, will appear and will actually be animated and walk over the space in front of the museum towards you. In this case, it's an advertising for the new Jurassic World movie, which is just screening now across Europe. And actually, at the moment, advertising is one of the primary application areas of augmented reality. But it's not the only one. The technology is actually quite old, and it started in the 1960s and was used by the military. And if we look at the characteristics, it's any kind of technology that blends our real-world environment and digital information. And this is mostly done context-based, so depending on your position and time and goals. So it's very important to have three characteristics so that you can call a technology AR. First, it's the combination of real and virtual. Second, it's interaction. So it's not just consumption. I can click and point with my camera and get a reaction from the technology. And number three is we have an alignment of objects, real and virtual in 3D, as you have seen with the dinosaur, which was, it is a very real experience in 3D if you use this technology. So if you looked at, so augmented reality is one type of mixed reality technology, and the other type is of course virtual reality, which we know. So one other technology which is very popular right now is the Oculus Rift goggles, which you see at the bottom. The difference between the technologies is that in virtual reality you don't see the real environment anymore. So it's not blending, it's a total immersion into the virtual world. And in augmented reality we always see the virtual world kind of behind the virtual world, or the virtual is projected on top of the real world. So the question is, what can we do with these technologies in the context of higher education? And one point is for sure that we can make abstract concepts visible tangible. Here we see an example of chemistry where you can visualize the structure of certain chemical elements in 3D, and you can even, if you move these two elements closer together, so one is oxygen, the other one is hydrogen, you will see a chemical reaction animated. And this, I think, much nicer explains what is going on in the world of chemical elements than just a text or just a static graphic. The Horizon reports on educational technologies consistently name augmented reality as one of the most promising learning technologies, and there exists lots of anecdotal evidence that students very much like this technology. However, our question was, do students actually learn better when they use augmented reality than without augmented reality? So not only the pleasurable experience, but also the outcome of the learning process. If you look into the literature, first you see that there is not much quantitative studies out there which is actually trying to measure the learning performance of students using augmented reality. So in a literature review of about 100 articles on augmented reality, we were only able to identify 7 studies which actually use experiments or survey to measure the performance. And if you look at the positive effect of augmented reality, the evidences are not conclusive. So here's 2 out of 7 studies did not find a positive effect. And if we focus on technical and formal subjects like physics, engineering, only half of the studies were successful. So with our goal of enhancing mathematics teaching, it is not really sure whether this works or not. That's why we have started a field experiment in one exhibition at our National Museum called Mathe-Liebe, so Love for Mathematics, which was directed at young students on high schools and even earlier. And it was also curated by a former mathematics high school teacher from Liechtenstein. The exhibition was a great success, and it is now traveling to different museums around Germany and Austria and maybe also Switzerland in the future. So what did we do? The exhibition consisted of more than 250 objects about mathematics and geometry. Here you can see some examples. And just by looking at the examples, you can already get a feeling that the content was quite abstract, as mathematics is. And we selected some of the objects and created augmented reality content for them. For example, in the top right, you see when you point your tablet on one of the objects that the curator of the exhibition is actually using or experimenting with the object and also explaining why he experiments what you see. Or in the bottom left corner, we have created an animation to illustrate the phenomenon of exponential growth with a famous wheat and chessboard problem. In total, we created 12 augmented exhibits out of 250. And then we recruited 101 people to participate in our experiment. So basically we went to the entrance of the museum over several weeks and asked people whether they want to use a tablet or smartphone to get access to virtual content when pointing the camera at some of the exhibits. We created the experiments in such a way that 6 of the objects were only accessible to group A and 6 other objects were only accessible to group B. This gives us the opportunity to always have a control group if we measure the performance of the learning performance. because before the people entered the exhibition, they had to take a pre-test in mathematics, unfortunately. And also after leaving the exhibition, it was another post-test. Of course, the test questions were related to the 12 exhibits. And by that, we were able to measure how much people learn while visiting such an exhibition. Because one of the goals of the exhibition was also to engage in an informal learning process and not only have fun while visiting the exhibition. Now I want you to present the results. Here you see the scores the people achieved on the pre-test and on the post-test for both the objects which had augmented reality content and the objects without augmented reality content. We can see several observations here. First, in the pre-test, both groups had similar performance. There was no statistically significant difference between the groups, which is important for us for the measurement. So we were lucky that not all the smart mathematics nerds were in Group A, and maybe the not so more art-related people were in Group B, so it was very well mixed. We also see that the mathematical knowledge of the people was not very good. They scored not even half of the questions right. And most interestingly, in the post-test, we see a significant difference between the two groups. First of all, a positive message is that both groups learned. So the visitors learned from augmented objects and from non-augmented objects. So that this is a very nice message. But more interesting for us is the difference between augmented and non-augmented. So in the dark gray line here, you see that it's much steeper, and the visitors perform much better than for the non-augmented exhibit. So we can say that this difference is actually an effect of using augmented reality. So the question is for us as a researcher now, why? Why does this work? And some explanations can be found in Meyer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning. And the theory is based on human information processing, how we process information, starting with the intake of words and pictures through eyes and ears, going over central memory system into our long-term memory finally. And Meyer states a couple of principles how good multimedia technology should be designed in order to support learning. And our argument is that augmented reality implements a subset of these principles naturally. For example, the multimedia principle. It states that you learn better if you use, or if you take as an input words and pictures together, better than just words alone or pictures alone, because we can use both of our senses and also the sensory memory. And augmented reality can implement this by overlaying, for example, pictures with written information, or by animating abstract written concepts with videos or animation. The next two principles, the spatial and temporal contingency principles, say that we minimize the distance in time and space between the presentation of text and graphics. This has a positive effect. So you know that from reading a textbook, for example, there's maybe an illustration, a graphic in the textbook, and the graphic is described in the text next to it, sometimes on the next page or the page before. So you always have to go back and forth between text and graphic, which takes a lot of cognitive effort, which you cannot use for memorizing the content or understanding the content. With augmented reality, we can superimpose the text directly on the graphic. And at the right time, so at the right moment when we walk past an exhibit or object in a museum or a specific building in a city. Principle number 4 is the modality principle. it says that if we have written information, we should not have it in printed form, but in spoken form, because then we can use our ears, a different channel, to take this information in and don't have to use our eyes for it. And in our augmented reality content, we also had the curator of the exhibition explaining the objects in spoken language and not only in text. And finally, the signaling principle says that we should add navigational elements which highlight the organization of the learning content in order to foster learning performance. And here you can use augmented reality and the triggers of augmented reality. So you always have trigger images or also trigger locations, geolocations, to activate multimedia content. And this can serve as a guide through the learning content and the learning process. Like, for example, the guide in music. Finally, we also ask our visitors whether they actually like the augmented reality content, because we were a little bit afraid that some people are a bit overwhelmed or have an information overflow. But as you can see here from the statistics, the vast majority of all visitors absolutely liked it. They said it was value added, it was not too much, and they want to see more of this in the future. So it's also from the user experience point of view, good technology. Okay, coming to the conclusion. Nowadays we have augmented reality systems which are affordable to everyone through smartphones and also through tablets. These have all the power of, for example, Google Glass, and most of us have them in our pockets. Our experiments show that augmented reality can improve learning performance, but does not have to, if you remember the table with other experiments I showed you. One possible explanation is the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. And if we believe our visitors, they perceive augmented reality as a valuable add-on for museum exhibitions. And from this perspective, from the perspective of a museum, it might be a replacement of the good old audio guide that you know from museums that you have to carry around and hold to your ear. Okay, this brings me to the end of my little presentation. Thank you very much. You can see the view I can enjoy right now when I look out of the window. And now I'm open to questions and comments.
Yep. So, do you have any questions, comments? Yeah, we have one question.
Thank you very much for this inspiring presentation. A little question I have is, how would augmented reality compete with regular video content? And where would you see augmented reality being more useful than video content in education?
If I understood you correct, it's about the difference between video content and the augmented reality?
That's correct, yeah. Where would you use either one? Obviously, augmented reality will be a lot more expensive to create, I can imagine. Video content has a lot of the features as well.
Yeah, sorry, it is really hard to hear you. But
I think you got the question right.
Yeah, okay.
So indeed.
So the difference is, I think, about at what point in space and time you actually consume the video content and how it is integrated. So it's a much more immersive experience if you have an animation in your real environment, which is actually blended in with a transparent background, etc., and which is activated when I point at an object than just having a QR code, for example, which would play a video then. So it's much more realistic experience. That's the main difference in my point of view.
Hi there. Most surprising findings of the study?
Surprising findings?
Yes.
It was surprising because we had other experiments before with augmented textbooks, for example, where there was no positive effect of learning because people were distracted by the animations, for example. So it was not 100% sure whether this will work or not. Remember, in the end, we had just 8 multiple choice questions which were to answer. And you could easily get this content also from looking at the traditional information which is next to each exhibit. So there were flyers and information board.
Any other questions? Because we have like unique opportunities to talk with the expert.
Yes, Oliver, thank you very much for this interesting presentation. I enjoyed it a lot. And you showed some research. This was answering the question, yes, no. Is augmented reality helping or having it, does it help versus not having it? Can you find some research showing the difference or the influence of augmented reality versus reality? Take, for example, chemistry. The real-life experiments with explosive and feeling the smoke and the smell, does it have better influence on learning than just the tablet experience? Which one do you think is more immersive? I know which one is more expensive, of course, but that's a different thing. Or visiting a company in case of management science, does it have more positive effect just than looking at the company through your tablet or Google Glass? What do you think? Thank you.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, and I would almost prefer to have a real chemistry experiment than just a virtual. Unfortunately, this is not always possible. In our exhibition, for example, we had some very old calculation machines, and students or visitors were not allowed to touch them. And here we had a demonstration of the machine by the curator, so we can see the machine in action without actually touching it. So I would say the potential is in some domains where it is not always possible to try it out yourself. I've also seen nice augmented reality experiments with the human body where you can actually look inside your body and see where your organs are located, which is not always possible in reality.
Okay, we have one more question.
Good morning. Thank you once again for a great presentation and for choosing great topic. And my question is a bit similar. I know that in our region, in Silesia, we have 2 universities who already implemented augmented reality into their courses. One is Technical University, which implemented augmented reality in mechanical studies. And as far as I know, the students are very much satisfied with the results. We've seen all these engines working, etc. So that confirms what you said, that it really pictures are better than the words. But another example, very new one, is augmented reality in Academy of Medicine, University of Medicine here in Katowice. And what they did, they replaced some laboratories where experiments with frogs and all these animals into augmented reality. And the results are not yet known, but the question again is to you. Do you think that for medical studies it really works? Because as I said, for mechanical studies, perfect. For engineering, for medical, I'm not sure. Because students were somehow deprived of real experience, yeah? They said, well, the heart is not real, we prefer the real heart. So how do
I again understood that the question is about the real experience and the virtual experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were simply where it makes sense, yeah?
So I did not get the last.
Do you have any examples of from medicine area where this augmented reality do you have any results where implementing augmented reality instead of laboratory studies has sense? Yeah, whether a student satisfied.
I think there is also the question about the ethical issue of this in the context of the medical university.
It is, for the time being, is an ongoing experiment. Yes, in here. So we don't know the results. But how do you think? Is it worth to do it?
Yeah, I'm really sorry, but the audio quality is not very good. So I'm afraid I could not follow the discussion and the long question. There's a lot of echo inside my audio. Yes. That is an interesting question because my wife is a doctor of pathology, so she is very much used to cut, and it is if you ask the doctors or the students, it is absolutely necessary to do it yourself in reality. So I would here say it's just a very first step, maybe in school. Also a more ethical way of showing such processes and procedures. But as soon as you go into more professional context, it cannot replace the real experience, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Great. Do you have any other questions? Yeah.
Is there any study known on the long-term impact on this type of learning? I can imagine that when you are going to the exhibition, you see that's flashing up and it's very interesting and you will remember it maybe when you are going out. But what about 2 weeks afterwards? Is the hard way of learning a better way to do it or not?
So we have the same question, and luckily we are able to go back to the high school class and redo the test, but we have not done it yet. So we want to wait a certain amount of time and redo the test. But I'm not aware of any long-term studies so far. Of course, the fear is that it's much about the excitement and that you are more excited about it and also pay more attention, as you have said. And it's questionable whether this lasts very long or not.
All right.
I think if it's about long-term learning, it's always about also practicing it again and again, which is very important in this case.
Okay, thank you very much. And one more question from Edwin.
Just one comment to add to the discussion around augmented reality in medical science. I recently learned of a surgeon who's a heart surgeon who actually augments the heart that he's operating on top of the patient to help. And I think the Google Glass was one of the most embraced by surgeons to help them during actual surgery. So it's more supportive than replacing real laboratory work, of course, but it definitely has its merit there. I have one maybe a little bit provocative question finally to Dr. Müller. So if we think a little bit ahead, Dr. Müller, what is your prediction? When will we be able to augment the teacher or the professor in front of the classroom? I know Cisco can also already do that with their hologram technology. They can put a speaker on stage that's not there. So what do you think? Which year? We want to hear a number.
So the question was when we will have a virtual teacher projected. Yeah. I mean, we see all this movement towards massive open online courses where we have basically a video teacher somewhere. Actually, it's not live at all. And if you think back about some of the Star Wars movies where we had these holograms of people, so I think it can happen. It would of course require really a live session, unlike normal massive open online courses which are just recorded sessions. And in this case it could be an enhancement of an online course. 10 years.
What?
When do I go on retirement? I don't know.
And one more question. Yeah.
Why would it have to be a live session instead of a pre-recorded ones? Because the oxygen atom and so on are pre-recorded. I mean, they do interact live, but...
So if the teacher is the virtual content, I would say it should be live because one part of augmented realities is interaction. So it's not just about playing a video, but also looking at it from multiple perspectives, taking action, and of course, if you think about a totally artificial intelligence teacher, like in a computer game, an opponent, that could also be possible, and it doesn't have to be live. But it takes 20 years.
All right, thank you very much. Do you have any other questions? As the chair of the session, I need to keep the discipline, so it's, no? All right, so Oliver, thank you very much for very interesting and very inspiring presentation. So big applause from Katowice, to you. And thank you so much that you join us online. Of course, you can still join us if you have enough time. So, for example, you can switch to the internet, to our TV, and you can, because we are broadcasting a whole conference via internet. So you are welcome, and you can join. You can stay with us for the whole conference. So, thank you very much, and all the best to you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye. And now we are coming back to the real life, so from the virtual one, and I would like to invite Edwin van Rest, co-founder and CEO of Study Portals, as our keynote speaker to deliver your presentation. And the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Smicek. And obviously to the rector and other professors, and in particular the project partners and funding partners in this room for inviting me and organizing this wonderful conference today. New media in higher education, I think that's a fascinating topic. And I think if you go into the helicopter and reflect a little, then new media has not yet disrupted higher education yet. If you compare to how it has already affected the music industry, or books, or medical science, or retail, or industries even like transport today, and dating, I think higher education is still, in its beginning phase, still rather traditional. And perhaps, as we noticed today, I do believe we are approaching a tipping point. A tipping point where new media will really accelerate into higher education, and the information digital age will disrupt the industry. Now, I have good news and I have bad news. Who wants to hear the good news first? I think people want to hear the bad news first. So the bad news is that I think that new media and the disruption of higher education will pose very significant fundamental challenges to many education institutions globally. I think it will force them to rethink themselves, to rethink their long-term reason of existence in a more fundamental way than they have had to perhaps do in the last couple of 100 years. And I even think that some of them will cease to exist. That was the bad news. Now the good news is that I think that people like you, active in media and active on the marketing and promotional side of education, will become more and more important. As education becomes more scalable, student numbers become more important, and media, communication and marketing professionals will become more important. And also, in the digitized world, almost everything that happened is recorded, is tracked, is recorded somewhere on a server, and this brings a wealth of data. Which means that as a marketeer you can use data to your advantage to predict the future and optimize your work, which brings a lot of efficiency opportunity. And as an academic or as a researcher in media or in promotion, you can leverage that data to do much better research, to determine much more exactly behavior and dynamics than they used to be in the past. This is what I will be talking about today, and I will try to show you how the use of data can almost give you a crystal ball to predict the future and to optimize your activities in this field. First of all, a little bit about myself. Thanks to the hard work of many people like you, I was able to study in Japan. I'm an industrial engineer, and it was my dream to go study in Japan. And this is where I was caught by the value of an international education. It was for me an unbelievable and very instructive experience to study in Japan for more than a year. It was also very difficult for me to arrange to go to study in Japan. And when I came back, I was full of stories, and many of my friends said, wow, I wish I had known about those opportunities. Now, if you only look at, so this is where my motivation came from, to help other students to go study abroad and find the best opportunity in education for them globally. If you look at if you're a top student, perhaps one of your children, or you yourself still if you want to do a PhD, if you look at just the world top 500 institutes, how many English start education programs do you think they offer? Who dares to make an estimation? Wolfgang, you are a very knowledgeable man. Three. 40 per institution, that would be 20,000. It's a little more. If you look, especially in the UK and in the US, you have institutions offering sometimes 100, 200, 300. So it's 45,000 education programs just at the world top 500 universities. And that was the problem that I was facing when I was helping my friends to go study abroad. They were looking mostly for master's programs abroad, but there was no way for them to find and compare what suits them, what were their opportunities. In every discipline there are hundreds of programs. And that is really what Study Portals does. Study Portals is the company that I founded with two co-founders back in 2009. And what we try to do is make education choice transparent for students, so that they can find and compare all those opportunities and select the one that fits them best. We are about 6 years on the way now. We have first focused on Europe. We have more than 1,800 universities participating. We had over 9 million unique students using the site in 2014, realizing in about 160,000 students actually going abroad. You can imagine what kind of data this brings. We have the search behavior and the interests of millions of students across the world that want to study in Europe. We also have reviews, so we also know if students are happy about their programs. We have more than 100,000 student reviews, student experiences. We have also a database of scholarships, which contains more than 16 billion euros of scholarship programs for students that want to study in Europe. This still grows fast. We're growing currently about 55% on a year-to-year basis. And our biggest objective for this year is to have the world top 1,000 universities all in the platform, so that at least the top students can find all their options in one place. All right, now the disruption of higher education. This is one example that perhaps visualizes it best, I feel, in what can happen. This is about Georgia Tech. Who knows the Georgia Tech University? It's the second most reputable university of technology in America, after MIT. And they are #1 in computer science. And they used to teach the Masters of Science in Computer Science to about 100 students each year. Very selective, obviously. And they charge $66,000 tuition fee. Beginning from last year on, they have also started to offer this degree program online. Now, what does that mean? They started to offer that online. They're offering it at 1/10 of the price, so about $7,000. And this is perhaps the most fundamental change. They're offering it to 10,000 students. So imagine what the opportunities are with this. They can now reach students in countries that could never otherwise have traveled to the States. They can reach students who, because of their home situation or because of their learning style or because of their personality, cannot otherwise follow a traditional university degree. But also imagine what this does to the local market. Because what happens if you are university #3 or university #4 in computer science in the United States? You used to get the students that were not accepted by Georgia Tech. Now Georgia Tech takes 100 times the number of students that they used to take. So I think here you will really see how new media can disrupt the higher education space. And now I see you think. I see you think. It's almost like an augmented reality top of your head. Yeah, but that's the university in the States and they're far ahead and that's not happening here yet. Well, this is on our platform, the degree programs that are offered online in Europe. So it's already more than 2,000 degree programs, full degree programs. So we're not talking about the MOOCs that Mr. Muller was mentioning before, full degree programs offered online in Europe, more than 2,000. And actually that has already grown because this sheet is a couple of months old. And I see you thinking again, that must be the open universities or the online universities. No. 21% of those programs are offered by the open university or the dedicated new online universities, but 79% are actually offered by traditional universities. So this trend is coming to Europe. If you look at that a little bit further, I actually think we will be seeing, how did I call that? The unbundling of the university package. So when I was a student 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I bought a complete package from a university, which included the educational content, the professors, the books, and the teaching. It included the exams. It often included mentoring and study support. It included often even accommodation and a campus experience. And the degree. I think what we will be seeing in the future is that these various functions of universities will will be unbundled. And there are some good examples already live. This is some pictures from digital learning hubs, one in Moscow, one in Paris. I don't know who of you have heard from the Minerva project. It's a startup in San Francisco. They have already received $80 million in funding. And what they're doing is they select the most bright students, so they're very selective, just like an Ivy League school. But those students travel to 6 different cities over the course of the program, and they take education through online learning from the best universities in each field. So if it's automotive engineering, it might be LMU Munich. If it's corporate finance, it might be London Business School. If it's entrepreneurial management, it might be Stanford University. So there we already see the Minerva project takes care of accommodation and the mentoring of the students. The students still work together in groups, but the content and the professors come from various universities that are experts in various fields across the world. Now, what would this mean to the higher education world in 10 years from now, if this becomes common practice? Then it's also, at the end of the day, we're at the University of Economics today, so we also have to think about what are the economic implications of this, and I have looked that up as well. If you look at, typically, this is a little bit of a simplification of the reality, and it's depending on the funding mechanisms in a country, but typically, student income is a certain amount of money per student per year, a certain amount of money per student. Sometimes there's a graduation bonus. So more students, more income. Traditional education, the cost of traditional education are very much fixed costs, because it's the cost of the classroom, it's the cost of the teacher, and there's a certain class capacity. The class capacity here, up until where there's a sweet spot, where there's more income than cost. And if you go over that class capacity, you have to increase the class or increase the professors, and then you have to gain a lot of extra cost to be able to serve one extra student. However, in online education, it's different. Online education is much more scalable. So perhaps, and not a lot of people realize that, the starting cost of good online education is actually higher than good traditional education, but it's much more scalable. An additional student doesn't require an additional classroom or an additional professor. In the Georgia Tech example, they have made a whole pyramid of top professor, assistant professors, first line student support, second line student support, third line student support to mentor the students. Now, what this means is, you can see here, this is margin or profit. There's a much bigger sweet spot here. And for every additional student that the university will be able to bring on, there's quite a lot of additional income, but not necessarily a lot of additional costs. And this is economically the fundament why student numbers will become much more important. Because if you have low students, you'll have more losses. And if you have many students, you'll have a much better economical situation as well. Also, obviously, because of digitizing education, international competition will even increase more than it already is, because the location of the student is not the limiting factor anymore of receiving the content. Well, there's another trend where education becomes more dependent on private funding. You'll see tuition fee being increased in the UK, in Sweden, in Finland, in the Netherlands, I think even Norway is considering tuition fee. Is it wrong? I've heard discussions about it at least. All right, so all of this will lead to more demand on media, more demand on marketing in the education world. And now we come to the good news. as I already said, most things will take place digital, and digital is measured, and measured delivers data. And on the basis of data, you can act much better than on the basis of opinions or ideas. And the universities who will be able to leverage data, or the marketeers, the people among you who will be able to leverage data well, will have a much clearer path to success and will be almost able to predict the future. For one example here, in 2002, we in a study portal's visitor statistics, we analyze our user behavior once a year, and we look at trends. And in 2002, we saw a big growth of interest from Southern Europe, Spain, Portugal, Italy, and most notably Greece, to come looking for education programs in Western Europe. Obviously due to the economic crisis there. Greece had a 160% growth in interest of what we saw. That created a lot of tumult in Western Europe. We were covered in almost all news media. We had journalists and camera crews over at the office. And we even had the Ministry of Education in the Netherlands coming over, because the Conservative Party was asking questions, why are they all coming, and our taxpayers have to pay for that education. And actually 2 years later, it happened to be true. So there was a 150% increase in Greek students coming to the Netherlands. And that could have been easily predicted with the use of data. Now, how does education, marketing, and study choice actually work? This is a travel office. About 15 years ago, we all booked travels by going to offices like that. Who remembers that? Nobody? Everybody? Yes. And actually, this is still if you look at education marketing budget, this is still the biggest spend of universities today, is using student recruitment agencies. So university recruitment is still, to a large extent, done offline, through recruitment agents, through recruitment fairs. And that's going to change too. Because this is the share of mobile visitors to our platforms. So what you see is share of mobile visitors has almost tripled in the last 18 months. Which is amazing. And you also see Bachelor's Portal, where the students go to find a bachelor's program, are more mobile than PhD students, for instance, which has to do with the age difference. Now, what can you do to predict the future? We kind of use a method which we call the funnel method, which is understanding the whole student recruitment process. From a student becomes aware of your program, finds it somewhere, somebody tells him or her about your program, until really enrolling at your university. And every phase of this funnel requires different information tools, and every phase of this funnel can be measured. And in the end, if you measure the funnel well, you only have to optimize two things. First of all, you have to optimize the inflow of the funnel. So the number, the mix, and the quality of the students that become aware of your institute. And there are, of course, many different channels, but you can measure for everything you do how many students we have been made aware of my offer, and which students are they of the right mix. That's always one number you need to know for everything you do. And the second number is conversion. So how does this student convert into an informed student, into an interested student, into an applying student, into an enrolled student? And with conversion I mean the number of students that does the thing you want them to do, the successful thing, which would be, for instance, from becoming aware of your program to actually read the information about your program, divided by the total number of students that you reached. And here is an example of how you could use it. This is typically, for instance, what we are seeing in an online campaign. So to get one enrolled student, you need to reach about 8,000 students. It depends for every channel, because if you want to do search engine marketing, you might need to reach 100,000 students. You can also reach much more students through that. If you want to work with a recruitment agent, you might only have to reach 20 students to get one student, because there's a higher conversion rate there. But through knowing for each activity that you're doing, which number of students that means in the various phases of the recruitment cycle, you can determine what is the most successful channels for you. So, for example, if I can spend €100 to get one student into my university, that means if the conversion rates are listed as they are here, I can only spend 1/8,000th of €100, which I think is 1.25 cents, to reach a student. So I cannot spend even a flyer to reach a student, because that's much more expensive than 1.25 cents. But again, flyers might have a totally different conversion rate. Now, understanding the data in your student population can help you to optimize your media mix, to optimize your marketing recruitment funnel. And by understanding the data of the student population, which is here, can even help you to make sure that you're offering the right degree programs to the right audience in the future. We can very well see, for instance, what is the difference between supply and demand for degree programs. Engineering are still in the highest demand programs globally. One little other example of what you can do with data. Once your education is digital, you can optimize through the use of experimentation and A/B testing. There's a little example here, and this is from a Microsoft website in the US that is used for people to find a house. And this website promotes themselves on other websites, and for that they have developed a little widget. And here we see 4 different variations of that widget shown on other websites. Now, imagine you are the designer. You are the user experience designer that has to advise Microsoft on which widget is going to be the most successful one. And the objective here is to get people to show interest in one of the houses that they will find in the website after this widget. And we're going to put it to a vote. Who doesn't understand the assignment? Everybody understands the assignment? Are you ready to vote? Okay. So who thinks the first widget with a lot of details is going to win? Who thinks the first widget will convert best into people actually having an interest in a house? Nobody? Nobody votes for the first widget? All right. Second one with a nice picture. Yeah, it's about 10%, 15% of the people. Third one, search bar. Nobody? And fourth one. A lot of people don't vote. You're not... No, there's no fifth option. Yeah. They actually started experimenting, put a couple of 100,000 visitors through all of those widgets and see which works best. And the winner was the simplest one, in this case. But it's just in this case. And the interesting note is, nobody from Microsoft or ZAS, which is like an UX design firm, pretty famous UX design firm in the US, which they had to pay I don't know how much money to come up with this type of design, expected this one will win. Actually, none of you expected this one would win. And this is the power of data. You can know which one will win. It's the end of the guessing age, and I hope you will use it to your advantage and leverage it to have your own little crystal ball. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Thank you.
Testing. You talk about unbundling the university experience, campus, degree, testing, and mentoring, those four things being separate. I imagine it would be difficult for, say, the university in Munich to mentor students from Stanford. You've thought more about this than we have. What are your thoughts on this, on compatibility between those?
No, exactly. So that's exactly what I mean with unbundling. So there might be an institute in Berkeley, where Stanford is located, who is mentoring students, who has a different type of teacher, who is specialized in mentoring students, and actually that is already happening today in San Francisco. But the educational content, especially when it's, for instance, about automotive engineering, it comes from LMU Munich. So it would be a little bit like Dr. Muller today. There's somebody giving a lecture on a special topic of automotive engineering. But on the location, because I totally believe in the added value of a campus experience, of students working together and students having mentoring, is being delivered by a different entity, by a different group of people.
Testing. Just to follow up on that, it sounds as though you wouldn't have students, or you'd have very few students who would pick one from each, that they'd pick those four things from four different institutions, that they'd maybe pick A and B from one and C and D from another?
Yeah. I think maybe 20 years ahead, so this is very good news for you, I think there will be professors that's going to be have the same status as a rock star. And where they might reach 200 or 300 students today, in the future, if you are the expert on augmented reality in higher education, you might reach 2 million students. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And therefore, that's also related to what I said in the beginning, the bad news. This will mean that higher education institutes have to reconsider their region of existence for the future. Because you either have to be really niche, or you have to be top, or you have to focus more on the mentoring and regional impact side. But I don't think there will be, like there is today, 10,000 professors teaching corporate finance. Some of them who don't, can't compete with the Stanford corporate finance professor. But that only when it comes to the educational content. Wolfgang.
In a way, I'm terrified about your picture of the future.
It's beautiful.
No, well,
embrace it.
It could be. But on the other hand, if you say, well, there is this one professor, this one rock star, and he's at Stanford, which also means that then all the values Stanford is giving to the students, these are the only values which are then accepted. We will many teachers who are now coming with different ideas, with ideas which are maybe not accepted yet, but which are starting with good ideas, they will fall away, they will disappear, they won't get the students because everybody is going to the rock star. And this leads in the long end to a very monopoly of education.
I think the contrary. I think also for people who have an alternative view, there is the opportunity for them to reach a much wider, much bigger audience. So if you have a very good alternative view today, I might be able to tell you about it here, and I reach 100 people. But if I have a good alternative view, I can also reach a million people.
But if you are going back to your example with Georgia Tech, why should I choose a degree program from a second or third ranked university when everybody suddenly has the access to go to the very, very best?
You will have to have. you'll have to have a good reason for me to choose you. So if you are a professor and you have a very interesting alternative view, then you'll have to, and that's also why marketing and communication becomes important, you'll have to convince a following. Right? It's the same with politicians, or look at what's happening on YouTube with artists. 16-year-old girls manage to get a following of millions of people, which they would, with the traditional media, would have never been able to get. But yeah, you cannot, only the fact that you are computer science university number 4, which used to give you more than enough students automatically, that's not going to be the case anymore. You will have to have an additional added value, and you'll have to have a strong position to students who like to study at your school.
Just a comment on that. I think I understand Wolfgang's fears, but I don't quite share them. You find at physical universities that students prefer different professors for the same subject, and I think there is an overabundance of very boring and pedagogically bad lecturers, and there are a few great ones. And just as with music, as with books, as with many other things, some will prefer Thomas, some will prefer Sarah, some will prefer Jennifer. And as you said, a retired professor or someone who can't find a job can much more easily through the internet start their own course, and suddenly someone in Nepal is massively popular because they are good at what they do, instead of because Kathmandu University is very famous.
Okay, so any other questions? Yes, please.
Edwin, theory says digital disruption will hit the institutions with weak processes the most. So what's your estimate? How many % of higher education institutions today have processes or have the know-how or the teams to read the data which you are showing and to process the data?
It's quite a low number if I would have to make an estimation. But that's because, especially, and I also think, unfortunately, that in Europe we are not on the edge. I think we are relatively on the traditional side. That's also because how higher education is funded and was funded in Europe, with much more state-funded, if you, there are two questions. There's one is how to bring the university into the digital age, which is the whole didactic. I think there is certainly progress, which you also saw on my sheet. More and more universities are embracing it, but still, if I'm in the US or in Australia, they're further. When it comes to leveraging data analytics in the marketing funnel, it's a relatively small part of universities, and mostly it's the private ones, because they are already in a situation where they are dependent on the students, and they have to, they have to really tailor to the student to get the students in, and so for them it's more of a necessity. But the good news is it is very, very fast increasing. So if I was in an audience 5 years ago, people would say, Google AdWords, what is that? Or Google Search, what does that mean? And how is it relevant to us? And how do we get #1 position? Now universities have digital marketeers and have social media channels and have CRM systems to an increasing extent. So it is improving.
Mm-hmm. All right, so actually I have 3 news for you. The first bad news is that we have to stop because the time is running. But the 2 positive news is that Edwin is staying with us for the 2 days or 3 days. So we will have a chance to talk with him during the breaks and during the whole days. And also very good news is that soon we will have a coffee break. But anyway, thank you very much for very interesting and very inspiring presentation. And of course it got a lot of information, very practical information, how to attract the new students and completely new way of attracting. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So we have like 10 minutes coffee break. It's on both sides. And Then afterwards at 11:45, so we have a 3 session. In the program you will find the room numbers. So the 2 or 3 or 5 means the floor, and then is the room number. So the first session is taking place on the second floor, room 19. Then the second session goes on the 3rd floor, room 15, and another one is on the 5th floor, so this floor, and room 15. So you will see in the wings, you will find the classrooms there. On the doors, you will find the information about the program. And of course, and I would like to ask the chair of the session to be very tough according to the schedule, just 10-15 minutes maximum for the presentation, and then discussion. And the coffee break is on the both side as well. Later, lunch also will be on this floor on the both side. Okay, thank you very much.